The memory still claws at me, raw and recent, not even a month gone by. Senior year? Nevada-born, Nevada-bound, or so I thought. Truth is, this state isn't exactly a hotbed of excitement. So, my friends and I, we chased the ghosts of what was skeletal buildings against the endless sky, the damp breath of forgotten service tunnels, dead malls standing like hollowed-out skulls. Chain-link fences were mere suggestions, our boots crunched secrets underfoot, and the thrill? It was a stolen panorama from a rooftop, the echoing silence of a basement clinging to our clothes. We weren't vandals, not looking for trouble. It was about the feel, that eerie hum of a place the world had moved on from. Our resident magnet for the bizarre was Charles. Quiet as a shadow, a hint of something unknown flickering in his eyes. He'd just appear with these locations, swallowed by time and dust, places none of us had even whispered about. Half the time I didn't even bother asking how he found them. It was better that way, shrouded in his quiet mystery. Then came the digital breadcrumb. A screenshot from some Instagram account that felt like a back-alley deal pathetic follower count, photos blurred like fever dreams, a swamp of creepy comments festering beneath each post. The caption on this particular gem? Simple, chilling. Dozens of abandoned mine shafts in the Mojave Desert, if you know where to bleed and look. Charles, the moment he saw it, was gone, obsessed. He claimed he'd DM'd the account, and some faceless entity on the other side had dropped him a few cryptic coordinates. That was all it took. Saturday. My Wrangler, the beast for chewing up desert grit, swallowed me, Charles, and our perpetually unimpressed friend James. No address, just a general direction and a digital pinprick in the vast, indifferent heart of the Mojave. Charles's pin felt like the edge of sanity. We'd chewed up half an hour of asphalt, and the dirt track we were now on was barely a scar on the landscape. Time warped into a monotonous cycle of dust devils and shimmering heat. No signs, no hint of civilization, just the endless, mocking emptiness. My phone was a dead weight in my hand, stubbornly refusing to find a signal I knew wasn't there. James, crammed in the back, was a pressure cooker of annoyance. He was already laying into Charles a wild goose chase, a digital phantom conjured by some bored internet ghoul. Charles, his jaw set like granite, just kept pointing at the horizon. Stubborn bastard. Fine. A little more desert wouldn't kill us, probably. Just as we were about to admit defeat, James's voice cut through the simmering tension. "Hold up! What the hell is that?" Off to the right, a smudge against the bleached landscape. At first glance, just more sun-baked rock and sand. But as we lurched closer, it solidified, a skeletal wooden structure, half swallowed by the slope. The entrance looked like a giant's fist had smashed through it, splintered beams collapsing inwards, but a black, gaping hole still beckoned behind the remaining supports. Not massive, but undeniably carved into the earth. Undeniably a mine shaft. Charles didn't say a damn thing. He just pulled out his phone, the offline map glowing with an eerie light, and dropped a pin. A tight, almost predatory smile flickered across his lips as he turned to James. "Told you." James mumbled something about blind luck, but even I felt a prickle of unease. Miles of desolate nothing, and we'd stumbled onto this gaping maw. I parked the Jeep a respectful distance away onto a flattened patch of blood-red dirt. The desert air, thick and dry, felt suddenly heavy. Charles, surprisingly prepared for once, even had cheap dust masks for us. The mine entrance loomed, radiating a cold, silent dread. Charles picked up a jagged rock, the weight of it grounding him, and tossed it into the blackness. A sickening thud, then a hollow clang, 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 fading into an echoing abyss, deep, unfathomably deep. Charles turned, his eyes dark and unreadable behind the mask. One wrong step down there, and that's it. The descent began. Thankfully, the shaft wasn't a sheer drop, but a treacherous slope demanding every ounce of our concentration. Loose scree skittered under our boots, the air growing colder, heavier with the smell of damp earth and something else. Something metallic. Ancient wooden beams, groaning under the weight of time, lined sections of the wall, their rough surfaces whispering tales of forgotten labor. Deeper, the sunlight vanished, swallowed by the earth. leaving us in a suffocating darkness punctuated only by the weak beams of our flashlights. Eerie? It felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. Finally, the shaft spat us out onto a relatively level floor, opening into a wider tunnel that branched like a network of veins into the darkness. It was the picture etched in every urban explorer's mind: decaying support beams marching into the gloom, rusted rails clinging to the dirt like skeletal fingers, a thick shroud of dust muffling every sound. Scraps of forgotten wood and twisted metal lay scattered, the ghosts of old carts, discarded tools rusting into oblivion. The air hung stale, thick with the cloying scent of dust and something vaguely organic. Suddenly those flimsy masks felt like a lifeline. We picked a tunnel at random, our flashlights cutting nervous swaths through the oppressive dark. No conversation, just the crunch of our boots and the frantic dance of light. The place felt picked clean, the relics of its past long gone. But then, a sound, faint, almost swallowed by the silence from deeper within the earth, a dragging. That's the only way to describe it. At first my mind tried to rationalize it, the mine settling, the groan of ancient timbers. But then I saw Charles freeze, his head cocked, his entire body a statue of attention. James, his face pale in the weak light, motioned for us to kill our flashlights. We plunged into absolute suffocating blackness, the silence amplifying the frantic drumbeat of my own heart. Then it came again, a raw, scraping sound, metal on stone, wood grinding against something rough. The echo twisted it, made it impossible to decipher, but the direction was clear. It was coming closer. We stood there, blind and vulnerable, for what felt like an eternity. 30 seconds, a full minute. Each rasping scrape tightened the knot of terror in my gut. It wasn't right on top of us, but the slow, deliberate approach was undeniable. Then James, bless his panicked heart, flicked his flashlight on and off in a jerky burst. I wanted to scream. The scraping stopped, utter, deafening silence. Then from the black maw of the tunnel, a violent clang, like whatever was being dragged had been abruptly dropped, the sound reverberating through the rock. And then, the scream. God, that sound. It ripped through the silence, a raw, unholy shriek that clawed at the very edges of sanity. It barely registered as human. We didn't think. We just moved. A primal surge of adrenaline propelled us forward, our own ragged breaths echoing in the narrow tunnel. Footsteps pounded behind me, impossibly close, and the air in my lungs turned to icy shards. Panic clawed at my throat. I was last, my lungs burning, and then my foot snagged, my cheap sneaker ripped off, the jagged ground tearing at my bare skin. No time. Keep going. Ignore the white-hot pain. Up ahead, Charles and James were already scrambling up the incline, their movements desperate. I threw myself at the slope, a raw, animalistic scramble. Those makeshift stairs, half barefoot, were a medieval torture device. Every splinter a fresh jolt of agony. Only the pure, unadulterated terror kept me moving. By the time I burst into the blessed open air, my foot was a mangled mess. James and Charles, their faces etched with fear, practically had to drag me to the Jeep. Driving was out of the question. James slammed it into gear, tires spitting gravel, and we didn't dare look back. The silence in the car was thick with the unspoken horror, broken only by my ragged gasps until the sterile fluorescent lights of the nearest hospital washed over us. Tetanus shot, the agonizing extraction of splinters, days of hobbling. That was the price of our curiosity. A few days later, when I could almost put weight on my shredded foot, James confessed he'd lost his wallet somewhere near the entrance. Going back inside was a non-starter, so we drove back, Charles's saved pin a grim reminder, no wallet. But my shoe? Sitting a few feet from the mine's gaping mouth. I limped over, a cold dread settling in my stomach. It was ruined, shredded, torn apart like something with teeth had savaged it. Actual, unmistakable teeth marks, chunks of the sole ripped clean off. We didn't linger. Rational explanations dissolved in the desert heat. A homeless person? Surviving how? Eating what in that desolate darkness? Charles's messages to the creepy Instagram account remained unanswered, swallowed by the digital void. The desert suddenly felt vast, ancient and hungry. And the thrill of urban exploring? It tasted like ash in my mouth. I've always been a creature of the wild, the rough edges. Give me the crackle of a campfire and the smell of pine over some sterile resort any day. Tiki, my girlfriend of 6 months, she gets it. That shared love of the untamed is probably the bedrock of what we have. A couple of weeks back we craved something different, the desert. We'd hiked through forests, scaled mountains, kayaked across lakes, the nature sampler platter. But the stark, silent isolation of the desert, that felt like a deeper kind of connection, a raw communion with something ancient, and the stars, God, the desert stars. The third night I woke up to the softest of sounds outside the tent, footsteps, just a couple of faint crunches like someone tiptoeing across the dry earth. My breath hitched in my throat, not an animal, too steady, too deliberate. I lay rigid, every muscle screaming in protest. I wanted to grab the flashlight, shake Tiki awake, say something, but I was frozen, a block of ice under the thin nylon. My heart hammered against my ribs. The steps didn't circle the tent, they stopped, just a few feet away, and then a long, suffocating silence. I stared at the tent ceiling, barely daring to blink, waiting for the next sound, the next move. But whoever, whatever, was out there remained still. A silent, unseen presence. Time stretched, each silent second a tightening coil of dread. I prayed they'd just walk away. Then, a flick, that sharp, unmistakable snap of a lighter igniting. A small orange glow bloomed through the tent fabric, maybe waist height, a few feet to the side. Whoever was out there held the flame steady for a terrifying few seconds, then started waving it slowly, deliberately, like a malevolent firefly. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at that pinpoint of light, a harbinger of something terrible. Then it grew, exploded, from a tiny flicker to a hungry glow like they'd set something larger ablaze, a torch maybe. Then without warning, they dropped it, a dull thump against the parched earth. And a heartbeat later the side of the tent erupted in a whoosh of orange. The heat slammed into us, a physical blow, way faster than I could have comprehended. Within seconds, the fire was a living thing, greedily consuming the nylon. That's what finally shattered the paralysis. I jolted awake Tiki, a strangled cry tearing from my throat. Her eyes widened in dawning horror. We scrambled, adrenaline overriding thought, just a frantic heave of our gear out into the dirt. I'm not even sure we got everything. We burst from the inferno, the heat scorching our faces. Tiki, her mind clear in the chaos, grabbed a water jug, dousing the hungry flames while I stomped at the tendrils of fire reaching for the dry brush. Eventually we beat it back, leaving half the tent a smoldering ruin. I snatched the flashlight, the beam cutting a frantic swath through the darkness around us, searching for the face of the person who had just tried to incinerate us. Nothing, just the indifferent desert night staring back. Tiki, her face pale and streaked with soot, started packing what little we had salvaged, her movements jerky and panicked. I followed suit, our speed walking quickly escalating into a desperate, stumbling run in what we thought was the direction of the truck. No landmarks, just the oppressive blackness. We were lost, adrift in the inky void. After a few agonizing minutes, the sickening realization dawned. We were turned around. Maybe 10 minutes into our frantic trek, I heard it again. That same distant scream from the first 2 nights. Only this time it didn't fade. It went on, a raw, sustained agony that sounded like an animal caught in a brutal trap. And then another scream joined it, closer this time, from a different direction, and then another. They were all behind us, closing in, multiple things. I didn't say anything, I just grabbed Tiki's arm, my grip a vice, and we ran. By some miracle, the hulking shape of my truck materialized out of the darkness. We threw our gear in, a chaotic jumble, and I jammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring like a caged beast. I floored it, the tires spitting gravel, but I couldn't go too fast. The rough track bucked and swerved under the weak beam of my headlights. Every dip, every turn felt like a potential rollover. An eternity later, the blessed smoothness of a main road appeared. I didn't let up until the headlights of other cars pierced the darkness, a lifeline in the inky black. Tiki was trying to be strong, but I saw the tremor in her hands, the unshed tears in her eyes. My attempts at comfort were clumsy, inadequate. We called the police, the sterile voice on the other end a stark contrast to the terror that still clung to us. All I could think was, if I hadn't been such a light sleeper, we would be dead, reduced to ash in the heart of the desert night. By some miracle, the hulking shape of my truck materialized out of the darkness. We threw our gear in, a chaotic jumble, and I jammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring like a caged beast. I floored it, the tires spitting gravel, but I couldn't go too fast. The rough track bucked and swerved under the weak beam of my headlights. Every dip, every turn, felt like a potential rollover. An eternity later, the blessed smoothness of a main road appeared. I didn't let up until the headlights of other cars pierced the darkness, a lifeline in the inky black. Tiki was trying to be strong, but I saw the tremor in her hands, the unshed tears in her eyes. My attempts at comfort were clumsy, inadequate. We called the police, the sterile voice on the other end a stark contrast to the terror that still clung to us. All I could think was, if I hadn't been such a light sleeper, we would be dead, reduced to ash in the heart of the desert night. All of that, the mine, the fire, it's a brutal backdrop to something else, something that's been gnawing at me, a slow burn of suspicion. My mom. I've always had this, not suspicion exactly, but a persistent question mark hanging over her past. She was born in Mexico, spent her childhood there before crossing the border alone for college. The rest is the classic immigrant story: hard work, my dad, a life built brick by painstaking brick in America. But her life before? It's a locked room, the key seemingly lost. She deflects any questions with a practiced ease, a well-timed joke, a sudden almost theatrical change of subject. Dad always chalked it up to childhood trauma, wounds too deep to revisit. And for years I accepted that narrative. Why wouldn't I? But as I grew older, those evasions started to feel less like protection and more like a carefully constructed wall. Family gatherings became a masterclass in conversational sleight of hand. These are just whispers from the fringes of the unknown. Do you have your own unexplained encounters? Are you fascinated by the shadows that lurk just out of sight? Then you found your tribe. Subscribe to Paraphiles for more chilling narratives and thought-provoking explorations. What do you think happened in that mine? Let's discuss it in the comments below.